Well, software engineering is cooked. Let's face it, software engineering jobs have been harder to get as more people go to school for computer science. What makes it worse is that AI is trying to take over our jobs before we could even finish building them. Just look at the new AI chat boy by a Chinese company that caused Nvidia stock to drop almost 20%. With all this push for AI to take over jobs and computer science being as saturated as it is, I was like, damn, why don't I create Discord? So I can put on my portfolio and hopefully a large tech company like Discord could give me a tech job. Little backstory. About 3 years ago, I already made a Discord clone, which was really just a messaging app made using Electron and Firebase. And while I was proud of my work at the time, my teacher gave me a C because, and I quote, it didn't have clean readable code. Like, is the consumer gonna see my code? No. So you know what I had to do, right? The Discord clone was pretty basic, but it had a few features that I want to add to Discord too. 1, a login system. 2, a way to message people. 3, a way to load custom themes. And last but not least, voice communication, which will definitely be the hardest. Last time I used Electron.js, which is a JavaScript framework which allows you to create a cross-platform desktop application. But the only problem with it is that it uses JavaScript on both the front end and the back end. So here comes Tari,
a toolkit for building native desktop apps with front-end web technologies and a lightweight Rust backend.
The first thing I did was actually create a mock UI. Don't worry, I'll change this later, but the hard part is starting now. For the server, I'm using Go, or as some people call it, Golang, which is really good at creating servers and is pretty straightforward. The server is technically 2 servers, where one will be the data server, which will just return the server name and the users connected to the server, while the voice server is responsible for transmitting the voice data. And speaking of voice, the voice part is definitely what made me want to quit the project, yeah. So at first, I just wanted to see if getting the voice data was even possible in Rust. So after a few hours of research, I've come across CPAL, which stands for Cross-Platform Audio Library. And it's just letting us read and write to audio devices. I personally use a Windows machine, so I also had to download ACO, which stands for Audio Stream Input Output. And that's all just for starting the project. Plus, it took me like a week to figure all this out. But after all that troubleshooting, I finally could hear my beautiful voice.
So you can hear it's
although the audio was pitched up. And the reason for this is that my microphone's sample rate was 48 kilohertz, which means that it gets 48,000 samples per second, while my headphone sample rate is 44.1 kilohertz. So I needed a way to convert the samples from 48 kilohertz to 44.1 kilohertz. And in doing so, I found another Rust package, and simple as that, is done. It worked. Now that I know it's possible to record and play audio in Rust, the next question is, how does Discord send the audio? Well, I have the answer. Basically, Discord voice communication is really 2 parts, the heartbeat and the voice transmission. I'll start with the heartbeat since it's by far the simplest. The heartbeat is just a message that you send to Discord every so often so that the server doesn't think you're dead. You know, just a quick hello will do. And the actual voice transmission is audio data that is compressed using Opus. And to go even deeper than this, to compress audio using Opus, you need about 20 milliseconds of audio. You could theoretically use more or less, but generally that's the standard. And oh yeah, Opus is what Discord actually uses for voice communication, since it's one of the best audio formats for voice over IP. Even a lot of games use it, like Lethal Company. My implementation of the voice sending feature is practically the same, minus noise suppression. When you join the server, the program creates a thread and starts the voice transport process. This process is when the program stores everything picked up by the microphone into memory, and then gets the last 20 milliseconds and encodes it with Opus. Then it sends it as a packet to the server. In theory, it's pretty easy, but in actuality, it was a pain in the ass. The reason for this is because Rust as a language does not have any global variables, and I hate multi-threading. Part of it has to do with my incompetence, but it was my first time using Rust. The next item on the checklist is a way to message people. And last time I used Firebase to store the messages, but since I've already built a service to handle voice communication, I'll just build on top of that. I started by using Socket.io, which lets the client and the server send each other messages. And after a few hours of dealing with the package GoSocket.io, it finally worked. I can't really just publish an app without a good looking UI, so I spent about a day or so using Material UI to make the app look pleasing to the eye. I then started working on an outline for themes, a group of CSS variables, and will automatically update based on the most recent CSS file imported, meaning that if you select a file as a theme, it will use that file to overwrite all existing styles. This is the same way I added styles about like 3 years ago. And while it's here, I also added a logging system that allows you to select your username, and that's really it because there's no need for authentication in this little side project. The final thing I added was a settings menu. And the settings menu just has an appearance place to change your themes and how your page looks like, and a place for your audio devices and volumes. Although, changing your audio devices and volume for each device was a pain in the ass since I basically had to rewrite half the audio code to check for changes in the audio device. But after all was said and done, it was finally over. Or so I thought, except the fact that I had a bunch of errors to fix and I had to build the actual application, but I built it. Only for Mac and Windows. I could not get a single Linux build to work, even though I tried 34 different times. But if you're using Linux, just build it yourself. You can try out or check out my code on GitHub, but don't go making any pull requests on why my code is bad. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more of me. And hopefully Discord emails me with a compensation package soon because I don't know what I'm going to do. This job market is for real cooked.